Hey class, so we're back and we're going to be working on rigging our models. So the first thing we're going to be doing is creating our joints and labeling them. Then we're going to create IK handles for the legs. We're going to bind the skin so that bind these joints to the model itself. And finally, we're going to add some controls. When we're binding the skin of our models, we have two options that I want you to be aware of. First is to use joint hierarchy, which is great if you have organic models such as flower stems or the body of my robot cat. Or you can use selected joints, which is great if you have robot style models such as my robot's arms. So just something to be aware of and keep a lookout for. All right, and so we're back. We have our model and the texturing is turned on. So I'm just going to turn that off. It'll make it a little easier for us to see. I'm going to pull up the two panel view. So in this left panel, I have my front view so I can see my model. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to put my side view. It'll just be easier to see where we're placing the joints. Under shading for each, I want to turn on X-ray joints, so that will let me see the joints through the skin. All right, and let's go to our rigging menu. So that's under this drop-down box, and we can go to skeleton and create joints. So first, let's check the option box and see what we're working with. I'm turning off symmetry, or it should be off. It's okay to have variable bone radius settings turned on. And then for our short bone radius and our long bone radius, we want it to have 0.5. So that just makes it a smaller joint in general. Okay, and everything else looks good. If you ever need to reset your tool, you can just click this button. And now we're ready to start making our first joints. So I generally like to start with the hips. So my hips of my character are pretty low, so I'm just going to start here. And next joint will be towards the right here, so it'll be the top of the leg. The next one is going to be the knee. You can see in my side view. I'm going to make this knee joint slightly forward of the other joints because that's where the knee is generally placed. And it will help with our IK handle. My next joint will be my heel joint, so I'm going to click a little bit backwards. And then finally, I have a toe joint, so I'm going to click towards the front. Now, we can see, I'm going to turn off my wireframe. You can see that these joints are a little bit further over than what I want, so I can just use my move tool. Notice that all of my joints are parenting each other, so if I select a top joint here, it will affect all of the joints below it. I'm just going to move this joint a little bit to the right. I'm going to grab my knee joint, move this to the right, and grab my ankle and toe joints and move them a little bit to the right. All right, this looks like a pretty nice little joint chain that I've got. I'm going to mirror it over to the other side of the legs, so I'm going to actually, before I mirror it, let's rename. So in the outliner, I'm going to rename the first one root joint. Second is hip underscore JNT underscore, this is the left, so underscore L for that one. Now I have the knee underscore joint underscore L. And then I have my heel underscore joint underscore L. And then my toe underscore joint. So I do JNT for joint. All right, and so now we have all of these nice joints. I am going to select the hip chain and go to skeleton and mirror joints. And let's again select the option box. Now, when we're mirroring across, you can kind of see in the indicator, it's very small, that I want to mirror across the Y and the Z plane. And for replacements, I'm going to search for _L, and I'm going to replace them with _R, which is the right-hand side. So now that I've got those, I'm just going to hit mirror, and I have a perfect, great group of joints on the left-hand side. Okay, so now we're going to make our IK handles. So our IK handles are inverse kinematics. So that's what is going to allow us to move our foot joint, and then that will cause the knee to bend and the hip joint to bend, and it makes our legs move in a way that makes more sense to us. Now there is something a little odd about the inverse kinematics handle in this particular version of Maya. So I'm using 2023.1. There's a bug that can be worked around. So in this right-hand panel, I'm going to go to my perspective view, and let's go to show and turn off pivots. Apparently something to do with the pivots is causing a bug. I'm also going to go to show and turn off polygons. That's going to hide my model so I can grip my my joints a little easier. So now you can see just the joints. Okay, so in our rigging menu, I'm going to go to skeleton, create IK handle, and I'm going to do this directly. If you're having problems with your joint orientation, you can also orient your joints first, but I'm just going to create my IK handle. I'm going to go to this right hip joint and grab it. And then I'm going to go to my right, or I guess it's the left ankle joint. I don't want to use the toe because the toe actually doesn't really cause the bend. It does its own thing. So now you can see this giant triangle, and that is pointing the way of the deformation. So now if I use this, I'm using my move tool, I can bend this joint up and down like a regular knee would. So I'm going to undo that. All right, now let's grab on the other side. Same thing. I'm going to grab my top hip joint, grab my bottom joint. Oh, I guess I got to click on IK handle first, or go to skeleton and create IK handle, and click on the hip, click on the ankle, and that is created. And now we can use that move tool to bend it. There we go. Awesome, so those are done. Okay, so now I'm going to show my pieces again. So I'm not going to work on any other IK handles, so I can turn back on pivots, and I can turn back on polygons. And same for this other one. I think can show pivots are okay. There we go. Okay, so now I want to make my joints for my body. My body is exceptionally long, so I'm going to add an extra joint, but if you do have only just or a short body, maybe just consider adding one joint there. Okay, so I'm just going to go to skeleton and create joints, and I'm going to try, I'm going to use my wireframe on shaded, and create one about mid body, and then one for the shoulders. Okay, and then from here I can do one for my left shoulder, one for the elbow, and one for the wrist. Cool. Now you'll notice that this joint chain wasn't created underneath my root control, so I'm just going to middle mouse button drag, and when I drop it, see how this creates like a little square? So I'll drop it there, and that means it's going to be put inside this root joint. So I'm going to rename these guys. So the first one, I'm going to call it belly, and this belly joint is completely optional. Then this one, I think I'm just going to call it like collarbone joint. The next one will be shoulder joints. elbow joints. And this is the right hand side, so let me add an underscore right, and this will be hands underscore joints underscore right. Okay, now notice that I only did one side of these. If you have a two-armed character, then you would want to go to skeleton and mirror joints. Because mine is a little bit special, I'm going to make my joints separately. All right, and then I do want to add a neck joint and a head joint. So let's do create joints again. I'm going to add a kind of base of the neck joint, and then I'm going to add one more that's kind of more for orientation just towards the top of the head. Okay. And now that I have these two, I'm going to middle mouse button and drop them into the collar joints because that's where they should be underneath. And then I'm going to turn off my polygon so you can see this a little more clearly. So for this first joint, I'm going to call this the neck underscore joint, JNT. And then for the head, I'm just going to call that head underscore joint. And that one's more just for positioning. The neck is actually going to be driving the action. All right, so the last thing we need to do is add one more joint change. So skeleton, create joints. And for this arm, it's going to be a little different because it has the kind of robotic pinchers. So I've added a joint in the shoulder, elbow, wrist, and pincher. And you can see when you're adding them in that front view, that doesn't mean that they're going to line up perfectly with your pieces. You can absolutely use your point snap or any of your snap tools to align these. And I'm just going to use my, my move tool and just kind of move them forward. Basically, my pincers are not going to grip, they're just going to spin in my animation. So I'm just making that wrist joint really spot on, and then the other joint, it will just be a short joint for positioning. Okay, and that's looking much better. All right, just need to rename all my joints so we can keep track of them. So let's do shoulder underscore JNT and underscore left. Same thing for the elbow, underscore JNT and left. The wrist, underscore JNT and left, underscore left. And then the pincher. So that's it for this video. Move on to the next video where we'll be binding the skin and also making the controls. Thanks, class.